Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Award-winning author and journalist Herb Boyd's latest book is a rich source of information on African Americans in Detroit. The book is titled Black Detroit, A People's History of Self-Determination. It tells the stories of the city's black population from the 1800s to the present day, and it documents their courage and determination in the wake of discrimination and repression. Boyd is going to sign copies of his book at the Charles H. Wright African American Museum on June 10th. Plus, he will take part in a conversation about the 1967 Detroit Rebellion. I'm pleased to have Herb Boyd as my guest today on American Black Journal.
Always
Welcome to the show.
Always a pleasure.
It is amazing to me that I've been doing this show as long as I have, and I don't think I've had you as a guest. There's something wrong there, right?
Right.
We have to fix that.
We kind of miss each other in Ann Arbor.
No, that's right. A couple weeks ago.
You did a splendid job on the panel there.
I tried.
No surprises there.
I tried. This book, I love the idea of this book, partially because I think when we talk about Black Detroit today,
yes,
people think of it in very modern terms. And if they think about history at all, they think of the Great Migration, which of course brought black people to the city in far greater numbers than before.
Sure.
But nobody looks back to the 1800s. I mean, you know, black people have been a part of the city for a much longer time than that.
Much
You
longer.
do a really, I think, you know, great excavation of all of that, the rich history going back much further.
Because in your introduction, you say the 1800s. Well, we can say 18th century.
Yeah, 18th century, right.
1700s,
right.
Because it goes back to Cadillac.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people don't know that he was called the Black Prince.
Yeah, right.
And I've been trying to dig into that, you know, what level of melanin are we talking about here for Mr. Cadillac? And a lot of people don't know that the car was named after him.
Yes.
You know?
Right.
So it's a lot of...
So there's a person, right?
I uncover a lot of things that the general reading population are not aware of.
Yeah.
At the same time, those who think they're truly informed about the city will be surprised by a number of things I uncover. It was an idea that was brought to me, Stephen. It did not germinate here.
Right.
You know, as many of my books brought to me by people who think I can do it.
Yeah.
I say, you think I can do this?
You really think I can do that?
In a way, it's been kind of germinating and percolating for a number of years inside of me. And certainly I've thought about it sometimes, and you push it aside. But finally, three women in particular, you know, talk to me. Of course, my wife is my companion, and she works hard as I do on these projects. And my agent is just absolutely peerless in what she does, and that's Marie Brown. And of course, the editor, Tracy Sherrard. Tracy's out of Flint, but she's moved right on up in the ranks of the industry, and she's just a remarkable editor. So with that kind of team, you know, how you going to fail? I can't fail with that, you know. And then it's growing. The team is growing too, because a number of others have volunteered their time because they believe so fervently and passionately in the project. And that's probably one of the most encouraging things, when you can get some of these top professionals who can command top dollars, and they're willing to kind of, look here, I'm going to help you out on this.
Because it's an important story
I think so, Stephen.
Let's talk about this title, A People's History of Self-Determination. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the things about this is that there's so many obstacles thrown, as we know so well, in terms of no matter what city you're in.
Sure.
And Detroit takes on a particular kind of resonance because of its location, historical developments there, the automobile industry, to say nothing of the migration periods that brought thousands, if not millions, you know, people from Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia. My family, my mother brought up my brother and I from out of Alabama.
Okay, wow.
Right.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a straight line migration if you look at the map, you know, and I'm certainly asking your viewers to do that. Check the map out, you know, see where you are on this. But anyway, what happens is that given all those obstacles, you know, we've overcome them again and again and again. And we start with slavery. A lot of my students, I taught for 15 years at Wayne State University, And in those early days, in talking to the young people who were coming in from out of Detroit public school system, of course, the cast no aspersion on them, but they were just not prepared at all to talk about African American culture and history.
Yeah.
That's what we developed at Wayne State University at that
Sure.
time. And of course, the '67 rebellion is connected to that. So you talk about this here determination, no matter what obstacles is placed in front of us, if it's slavery going all the way back then. And what I do in the book is almost episodically, you know, I pit those events where we have to recover.
Right.
Because after the Blackburn affair in 1833, that was the city's first major upsurge in terms of upheaval.
Sure, yeah.
So right from the start, you know, we couldn't get comfortable, you know, off the Underground Railroad.
Right. Well, I mean, some people don't know, for instance, that slavery took place here in Detroit. I mean, I talk to people all the time who think of it as a Southern institution, which it was in many ways, but there were iterations of it all over the North and including here in Detroit.
New York City, for example, they had more slaves in New York City than in the Carolinas at one time.
Right.
So Detroit is very over the ages, as you jump from one decade to another, you can see kind of the intensity, the role and the passion, the spirit of black people and the enterprise that they had, no matter what they were doing. If they were working in the foundries, you know, some of the other, the dangerous jobs in the plants, you know, whether they were, you know, out there paving the highways or cutting down the trees and building up this city, the whole infrastructure, black workers were there.
Yeah.
So when the union came along in this town after the automobile industry, well, who could best do that kind of work? You know, we've been doing it all along, so it was no big deal. But we came into those plants in such numbers and doing those kind of jobs that very few people, I need the lowest paid jobs, the most hazardous, the dangerous jobs. I mean, I worked at Dodge Main myself.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So just long enough to get out of there.
Yeah, right. That was not easy work.
Be here much longer.
Yeah. That was not easy work.
Tough work.
And people don't remember that the jobs that we were most allowed to do for the longest period of time were the worst jobs.
The worst jobs, the lowest paid jobs. And that's where we were. And that's where I was to a great degree, although as a swing man, when someone didn't show up from work, I did their job. Consequently, I moved all over the plant.
Saw the whole plant,
It was similar to my living pattern in Detroit. I lived all over the city. You know, we bounced here, bounced there, and I brought, each time I moved into a neighborhood, Stephen, I brought all those people with me when I went to the next neighborhood. I never left them behind.
That's really cool.
I took those memories right with me. Everything I learned here, if it was like a gyroscope, I learned how to play chess. You know, when I moved out on 8 Mile Road and had to go back down into the heart of the city again, I picked up a lot of skills and some understanding on how to get my own life together. And I think the movement, and of course I owe that all to my mother, and she runs like a narrative thread through the book. A close reader will detect who she is. No spoiler here.
Let me ask you about, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary this year of the '67 rebellion. In some ways, as you point out, that tracks with the history of African Americans in this city over centuries, this idea of resistance. What does that look like today?
You know, a lot of people, I think you said rebellion too, and therein lies a certain amount of controversy.
Some people don't like that.
Yeah, they think it's right. But it's a very sharp distinction there
in
terms of the activity of the people. Because when I arrived in Detroit, a couple of months before the outbreak of the '43 riot, you put race in front of that word. It was a race riot. And in the book, we have at least one example of that, a very bloody example of what happened with this intensity between the blacks and the whites.
And whites in the plants,
So anyway, when you get to the rebellion, it was less of that. And a kind of consumer revolt. You know, people were throwing bricks through the windows and running off with merchandise. It was property being assailed, as opposed, other than the law enforcement agency, the National Guard, the 101st and 82nd, coming in and doing their as well as the National Guard. There was a danger there for many of those people who were in the street, as they would say, breaking the law. So one of the things about that, even before the rebellion of '67, we cannot ignore the fact that as in most of those kind of cataclysmic aspects, there are always like an accumulative process.
Yeah.
There's some stages that led up to it. But here you have Mayor Kavanaugh at that time. If he'd have listened to Conrad Mallett Sr.,
told him,
he would have headed off a lot of that. But they had this kind of feeling that, oh, everything, we're not going to be Watts. We're not going to be Newark. We're not going to be Harlem. You know, we're going to be, we got a model city going here. And that's understanding for Kavanaugh coming out of that whole Kennedy, you know, and then later the Johnson administration, and what it meant in terms of the Great Society. They felt that we have everything together here. We don't have to worry. But if they, on the east side, Kirchhoff, 1966. That was a perturbation of it right there. You saw some indication that things were not as rosy as you thought. You dig it? So if they'd have paid attention to some of those signs, as John Dancy did early on, when the migrants were coming into town, he was very aware of social welfare needs that these people had. So we've had some fairly, what you call, visionaries, you know, in our government, but sometimes they're not heeded.
Sometimes they don't see it. All right, Herb Boyd, we could talk for hours.
Oh,
you and I.
We got to do it again.
Yeah, we would have to do it again on June 10th at
June 10th at the Riot Museum. Back home again.
We'll have you back on again, too.
Good to be here, baby.
All right, good to see you.
Thank you, Stephen.